Live at 5 at the Vive. I'm Nigel Barker, folks. Happy Friday. And all day today on the Vive, we have been celebrating artist and poet and fitness fiend Halim Flowers. Halim is literally taking the art world by storm. His story is extraordinary, and we're going to I believe he's actually just landed in Florida, normally based in DC, and he's connecting with, there he is. How are you?
I'm doing great. Ducking the winter storm is Palm Beach.
There you are. Look at you. I was just saying you're normally in DC, but I believe you landed all the way to Florida. How is it there?
It's great. The weather's great. The sun is great. It's beautiful. You know, everything is about thermodynamics, so it's just a great heat transfer.
I think it's called cheating, actually.
Yeah.
Avoid the winter like that, and you head down the south. You get to wear the white jacket again. You know, it's like,
yeah, it's a blessing.
You're looking fantastic. So look, thank you so much for coming on Vive, and we really appreciate you and also telling your story, your honesty. You know, at Vive, it's really all about, you know, a 360 approach and look at what it means in the worlds of health, fitness, and, you know, and everything that's to do with wellness. And when I look at you, someone like yourself, your story, your life has been incredibly difficult, really, in many respects. You know, and you know, you talk openly about how you were incarcerated for 22 years from the age of 16 onwards. Yet, you didn't. You know, obviously, that I can't speak for you, but when I read what you've written, your poetry, the things that you've gone through, you now have emerged, and you talk about love so much. You talk about love being the antibody. You are full of, it seems, sort of elements of forgiveness and looking into the future. Tell us, where do you get your inspiration from and this love?
Definitely from the Creator first. I believe, like, the Creator created everything that we love about life. We didn't create the sun. We didn't create air and gravity. These are things that we enjoy and that we appreciate. Secondly, from my mother. My mother, she loved me when I was the intellectual kid who took his pre-SATs at the age of 11 and was taking medical student classes at Howard University when I was 11 years of age. And she loved me when I transitioned and wanted to be a thug in the streets and getting a life sentence at the age of 16. And she loved me when I became a poet and when I became an artist, you know, through the life sentences and visiting the prison. My mother, she always loved me unconditionally. So when I saw how the Creator is so merciful and loving, and how my mother was, she loved me unconditionally, I liken my mother love to the sun. The sun doesn't make distinctions between race, gender, class, creed, or sexuality. It just shines and gives its light and to keep the photosynthesis going. So when I think about love, how I want to love, when I think of a person, I think of my mother. But when I think of an entity, I think of the sun. I just want to shine and give light that transcends the confines of those 5 social constructions that I mentioned: race, class, gender, creed, sexuality, and transcend beyond these, what I believe to be man-made social constructions that make us see each other in an indifferent way and divide ourselves from one another, when I believe we're all interconnected, everything in the universe.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it, how children specifically, you know, and clearly the younger they are, the less they see color, the less they see sexuality, the less they see anything other than simply love and kindness, right? If you go to a child kind, they love you back. It doesn't matter if you're disabled, if you have any issue, if you have a scar, they don't see that as something that's ugly or something that they don't want to look at. They just simply see you as someone who cares for them. But humans grow out of that for some reason. They get trained. It becomes a sort of, whatever happens in our societies, that we train the children, which become ourselves, to have hatred, to have, you know, to be judgmental on so many levels. And someone like yourself, who spent a lot of time in prison in a very difficult situation, you know, one would expect and not sort of feel that you should, you know, and wouldn't be surprised that you would come out and be angry, or that you would come out and I'm not to say that you're not, but, you know, how do you deal with that? And I want to ask you, in large part because on Vive we talk about mental health a lot, and how do people deal with that? And I know that you also talked, and I know you're a very fit guy, but it's a sort of a 360 approach for you, isn't it? It's fit. You look after your body as well as you look after your mind, and you bring that focus. And for everyone else out there, I'd just love to have a little sort of a dive into your mind as to how you basically kept yourself together for 22 years and how you did that a little bit.
What I realized, first of all, I had like great mentors. I think a lot of time people just think that just due to the lack of investment that society puts into the penal system, the criminal legal system, they think that it's just a depository for human waste. And you have some of the most beautiful people inside of prisons. They just haven't been given the investment into their humanity to develop their ideas and their dreams and their aspirations. So I had a lot of great mentors that just poured into me, told me to never give up hope, to stay focused on the goal. And the goal was not just a physical freedom, but a mental and a spiritual freedom. Because when you think about mass incarceration, though it is a reality that millions of people are behind bars in America today, but when I return to society, and especially transitioning into this fine art world where you deal with a lot of high net worth collectors, a lot of people are really mass incarcerated by fear and self-doubt and insecurity. So even though they have their Rolls Royces and their Benz and their big yachts and their mansions, a lot of them are not really living the authentic life that they really want to be, but they're living out this script for who their peers and their parents and their circle may praise them to be, right? And that's why a lot of people who collect my work, they say that if I was in your predicament, I would have came home angry and bitter. So for you to be so authentic about not only your joys and your successes, but also some of the horrible things that you have done as a child, and to share that in a transparent way with the world, it inspires them to be more loving to themselves and to forgive themselves and to forgive others. So for me, first and foremost, I realized that anger is not the best emotion to operate from, even when you're trying to fight for your freedom, right? So the best motivating energy and emotion to fight from is from love. And it's the same thing with the art process. When I first, started doing paintings last year, and, I believe what brought me to a great gallery like DTR Modern and a great art dealer like Ted Vasilov, someone who invested in me, when I was in my raw state as an artist. I believe that it wasn't the aesthetic of the things that I was painting, but when I had conversations with him to transfer that love vibration and that energy. And, you and I, we study physics. So we know that everything is a transfer of energy. So I believe that when I realized that anger is more detrimental to my mental and spiritual and physical self, that it causes ulcers and gallbladder. And I saw guys in prison going crazy with rage and anger and would get gallstones. You would hear guys screaming in the middle of the night because their gallstone bladders was trying to come out, and they was getting busting their arteries and getting cancer. I said, anger is not a good thing to fight from. So I'm going to choose love, and I'm going to choose to be fearless and not to be reactionary and defensive and always operating from a sense of as if I'm a victim, right? But operate from a sense of I'm going to fight for the things that I love and give energy and focus to the things that I love and not the things that I don't like or the wrongs that have happened to me. And once I just started operating off of that love vibration, naturally, universal law, you and I know we attract what we are more than what we want. And that's just been a steady progression. And once I understood that, I knew that I would come out of the life sentences and that I would be doing the things that I would be doing today, because I realized the world didn't need me to talk Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative. It needed me to talk about love. It needed me to paint about love, right? So when people say that my work is political, I say my work is not political. My work is about love.
Clearly, without a doubt, love supersedes everything, and it's
Right.
the only thing that conquers everything. And I mean, to be honest with you, talking to you is slightly mind blowing in large part because there's so many of us. You mentioned how people are trapped within their own worlds and they have their own incarceration, no matter who they are, no matter what level of wealth or poverty they're in. They can often find themselves incarcerated because they simply can't open up to the world themselves, and that you sort of, you know, despite everything in jail, in prison, you sort of thought to yourself, okay, I'm not going to let the anger take over me. I'm going to be in control of my own heart, my own love, and I'm going to be open. And that is a remarkable thing to be able to do, FYI. So, I mean, huge kudos to be able to have the wherewithal to actually pull yourself out of that. You know, the art itself, you just mentioned sort of just in passing just then, Halim, that you started last year. Now, what do you mean by that? Because your art is really accomplished. Do you mean that you started selling last year? I mean, were you painting I mean, are you able to paint in prison? I don't know. What does that mean?
In prison, by me starting out with 2 life sentences, I didn't have the luxury. I didn't believe that I had the luxury to go to the arts and craft department to paint. My focus was on litigating my case, learning criminal appellate law to litigate my case, to get the restoration of my liberties, studying and litigating civil law to make sure that the staff and administration would not abuse my civil or human rights as an incarcerated individual. And also, I did a lot of writing of books because I knew that I had to get my story out into society. So I started my own publishing company and published 11 books. And so once I returned to society, I had been like I heard Jay-Z rapping about Jean-Michel Basquiat. And I didn't know what it was because in prison, we don't have like internet and smartphones. So when I saw the article in the Wall Street Journal, because I used to read the Wall Street Journal every day about Jean-Michel Basquiat, and it didn't have any of his artwork, for me just to see someone who looked like me, right, celebrated in the visual art world, it triggered my interest. So when I returned to society and I was, you know, getting the bulk of my income from speaking engagements and performance arts with spoken word, when the quarantine came and took a lot of those events away, my wife suggested that we go to the store and just get some paint. This was in March of 2020. It just like, you know, for something to do while we was quarantined in the house. I'd never painted before. I've never drawn before. I've never sketched before. And I just, you know, I had all these art books that I was getting from the museums. And I just started looking at, you know, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Cicely Brown, George Condo, Cy Twombly, just looking at these different artists' work, looking at them on YouTube, and just, you know, like Malcolm Gladwell said, you get your 10,000 hours to mastery. So I don't know if I exactly got 10,000 hours within these 11 months since I've been painting, but I've definitely produced over 200 paintings. And, you know, it's like a current obsession. You know, it's just another way for me to artistically transfer that love energy. Instead of now writing and doing spoken word, I can use colors and shapes and imagery and text strategically on canvases, whether big or small, and just transfer that love energy. And I think that's why the paintings are you know, have been successful commercially. One, because I have a great gallery with DTR Modern, a great dealer with Ted, who invests a lot in me, and also people just resonating with the love. We was dealing in a time of like impeachment and people insurging on the Capitol, and you had the presidential elections. It was a lot of bitterness and anger and fear and anxiety. So I think when people was coming in contact with the canvases and they saying love is the vaccine, art is the vaccine, love is the antibody, it's just resonated with that deep desire that people have to love themselves and to be loved unconditionally. Even though they might can't articulate it, it's just like an energy resonation that they just connect with.
There's no doubt about it. And I think that, I mean, first of all, just looking at your art, it looks like you've been painting your entire life, and probably in your mind you probably were, you know, and it's here it is coming out. But it also seems to me that you're something of a polymath, which, you know, you clearly, no matter what you touch or do, whether it's a spoken word, whether it's painting, writing, illustrating, you have a way of just really mastering it and bringing it to people in a way that is really moving. So congratulations on all of that. It's incredibly impressive. In fact, when I posted pictures of you today on the Vive on our Instagram account, there's a record producer by the name of Jason Flom, who you might know. I'm not sure if you do or don't, but he was the Innocence Project, and that he's a friend of mine as well, and I've known him for years. And he said to me, "Oh my goodness, I love Halim. In fact, I just bought 2 of his paintings."
Yeah.
Right? It was just here I am. I'm like, okay, there's 2 degrees of separation here. Like this is I just met. I immediately was like, sort of, and if you don't mind me saying, sort of fell in love with you and what you're about and what you're saying and everything else. And I was so impressed. And then to find that somebody I knew so well had also discovered you and was buying your art. And I'm like, okay, there's something happening here, especially when you realize, and you know better than anyone, how precious time is, right?
Yeah.
And what that means. And simply what you've done in such a short period of time is remarkable. Take us.
But it's not a short period of time, right? And I always tell people that because the reason I'm able to create the things that I can create, I had a philosophy that I developed inside of a cage in solitude and pondering and reflection for 22 years, right? So it's not just like an instant success. It's been decades of work internally to be able to have the right frequency and vibration, attitude, internal culture, ecosystem, right? Because when we look at someone like Jean-Michel Basquiat, who had the talent, but the self wasn't developed, so when the fame and the monetary success came, it killed him, right? So it takes time to be able to create things that have an aesthetic that's not only visual but spiritual, right? And I think for me, I just don't want people to think that it's like a microwave instant, success thing. It's a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of forgiveness, right, to get to this space of love. And then when you receive the love back from the Jason Flums or the DTR Moderns or the Nigel Barkers of the world, my wife is a fan of you, you're able to handle it from a space of love and humility and open-mindedness, right, to where as though it doesn't destroy you. Because we've seen Kurt Cobain, Jean-Michel Basquiat, Charlie Parker, Billie Holiday, and the list goes on and on.
No, yeah. Listen, I hear you. I guess and excuse me as far as, with all due respect, fully understand the time and the years that go into obviously creating the man that you are and the mind that you are. But then there is also simply if you only just picked up a paintbrush a year and a half ago, that in itself is, yes, I know there was 20 years and plus building up the concepts behind what you wanted to paint, but not everyone could just pick up a paintbrush or a pan and cook, or there are things that just somehow elude people. But I feel that you're not holding yourself back at this point. You are like, I'm going to grab this world by the horns and I'm going to ride it and do whatever I can to show people the light in a way, right?
Right. And then the great thing is that, like I said, my wife, she made a suggestion, right? And she taught me. And I listened. And a lot of times, I just saw a movie called Malcolm and Marie, and I loved the movie, right? And it just because a lot of my pieces talk about like feminism and her story, and so a lot of time our great ideas and talents come from women who love us and nurture us, and we never give them the gratitude. So only thing we remember is like the Dr. Kings, but we don't remember the names of the women who were the life and blood of the Montgomery bus boycott, the ones who really were not catching the bus. We just remember the Dr. Kings. So I think that's important too, because it's like having that humility to listen to your partner and to allow your partner to shine through you and to guide you and to have that synergy. Because we live in like a very individualistic driven culture. And I don't believe that's healthy to the self. So just like, just wanted to say that, that the mentorship, like with fitness, my fitness mentor, Ernest Smith, ES Fitness, I remember we were inside of a cage together when he was studying for his fitness personal trainer certification while he was serving a 54-year sentence, not being sure that he would get released one day, but he had the vision to invest in himself. And now that he's out and ES Fitness is thriving and So I just had great mentors, you know, great. And that, I believe, having great mentors and having the humility to listen and to follow instruction, it takes a village to not just raise a child, but also a man.
You know, on the Vive in the past month, we've had a whole array of different people come on and talk about their personal experiences to do with health and fitness and wellness and what have you. And we actually had a guy called Starboy. He goes by Starboy, and he actually spent 3 years in prison in the UK. And while he was, as a kid as well, really, and while he was in there, he discovered calisthenics. And it was actually through doing calisthenics and sort of training his body that he sort of honed his mind and he calmed himself down. And he's now on a mission to take calisthenics all around the world, especially to prisons, and help other people out there, you know, find inner peace through training their body. And now you shared a whole series of like pictures and videos with us of you boxing and what have you. And you know, talk to us about that experience as well, and how important fitness has been for you as far as helping you to train your mind and train your body.
Well, I had a great head start because my dad is a boxing trainer, and he had me doing sit-ups and push-ups and hitting his hands and, you know, jogging and from out the womb, right? So by the time I was 6 years old, I was fighting amateur boxing for Ham AC in DC, and Ham was a championship trainer. His son Mark Two Shop Johnson, one of the first blacks to win a title in his weight class. So it goes back to having that mentor in my dad who instilled that love for fitness and self-defense in me, and then having a village of people like Ham AC, Mark Two Shop Johnson, Little Adam, just older people who just, you know, instilled that, because, you know, boxing and training is difficult. Doing core work, it hurts. Doing pull-ups, it burns, that the lactic acid. But to still be able to have the grit and the willpower to love yourself enough to know that this is an investment in self. This is a manifestation of loving myself, to go through the lactic acid that's in my muscles and walk through the pain. And I couldn't have did that without my dad, Ham AC, Ernest Smith, as I said, ES Fitness. And to this day, it's just a crucial part of my life. Even when I went to prison at the age of 16, you know, you're a child in an adult prison, so you have to be physically fit to be able to defend yourself. And I think that put me on a trajectory of like a really extreme workout, really, where I probably was overtraining, but in a very in some of the prisons that I was in were extremely volatile and violent. You know, that's just how you had to train your body and mind in those environments just to survive. But for me now, it's just like working out, eating healthy. It's just a love for self. If I'm going to be in the world saying that I'm standing on the Constitution and the platform of love, then I have to be the love. So when people see me in society getting up in the morning, working out, even though I may fly down here to Palm Beach, go to DTR modeling, do 3 paintings, right? Go to the gym, get up early in the morning, jog on the beach. All of the art, the creation of the art, the volatility of the productivity that I have, all of that is directly tied into the discipline, the willpower, the grit that fitness gave me, and also taking into consideration that I was a child raised in Washington, D.C., when it was the murder capital of the nation. So to be able to survive in an environment that tells you you're going to be killed before you're 18 and live to see 16 and get 2 life sentences, all of those push-ups, pull-ups, dips, sparring, boxing, it prepared me mentally, physically, and spiritually to defend myself against a criminal legal system that completely dehumanized me, and to be able to come out after 22 years as a whole human being who wants to love and forgive even those who were a part of my dehumanization. So I just like, fitness is just like, to me, it's a manifestation of love. And once you have that high frequency and that high commitment of love for yourself through fitness and diet and nutrition, then I believe you stand in a healthy place to love a partner and to love your children and to love your neighbor and to love your nation, right? So for me, it's like being a neighbor, a politician, a judge, whatever. You cannot do any of those things effectively if you don't love yourself. And for me, fitness, nutrition, diet, exercise is one of the highest manifestations of self-love.
Love is the antibody, as you've said many times.
Vaccine.
You know, I've got one more question for you. Vive comes from the word vivre, which means life, to live. And I'd love to ask you very simply, from a man who knows all too well what life means, what does life mean to you?
I think now I'm gonna over intellectualize this briefly. It's a double entendre for those who come from where I come from. Because life means I just had a daughter last year. She's 7 months of age. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of a process to bring forth life into the world. But also life ultimately, for a lot of people who look like me from where I'm from, a city that had the highest incarceration rate of any city in the world for decades, Washington, D.C., life is something that's a curse. It's a word that is uttered from the judicial chambers to condemn us to the prison industrial complex. So for me, it's like life, when I look at it studying physics and biology, everything that's physical is atoms. And atoms have this dichotomy of protons and electrons, right? This positive and negative symmetry that's going on. So when you think about life, to me, I can think about the aesthetics of being a dad, bringing a life to the world, seeing other people live a healthy and a successful life, but also taking that same four-letter word, and when it's coming down from someone dressed in a black robe on a wooden bench, and they hit the gavel, boom, and you have to see that on that judgment and commitment order. And every 6 months, you have to go before your case managers and be reminded that you have life. And you can't take this program and you can't take that program because you have life. So for me, even though I'm free and I feel like life to me is like loving yourself, loving those who love you, and even transcending to a space of love those who think they hate you, right? Unconditionally. To me, that's life and living. But also, it's that dichotomy, that balance of how that word can be used to condemn people to a life of civil death. And even after you release, it's still like countries you can't visit because you're a felon. You know, even though you served your time and you do great things in society, you're forever stamped as a felon. And it's just certain things that you will never be able to do in society until you get a presidential pardon. And that's like 1 in 5 million chance, you know, of being able to get that. So that's just my over intellectual, poetic way of saying what life means to me.
And we thank you for sharing that with us. And actually, I was going to say, I said that was your last question, but only because there's been a few people commenting, and I noticed that, you know, one of the questions, for example, talking about life and love, you know, people are asking, you know, if you could love unconditionally, but when someone does something like, for example, you throw your ball over your neighbor's wall and they don't throw it back, you know, do you still love? You know, I mean, I would imagine the answer has got to be yes, but I guess that the bigger question there is that when people wrong you and they wrong you over and over again, or they walk away from you, how do you find the capacity to love?
I think like the greatest examples, because like in America, we say that we're a Judeo-Christian nation, right? So you think about the Old Testament, you had Moses. And I believe people like Moses were chosen because he murdered someone unjustly. And he was a fugitive of the law, right? But the Creator had a plan to take this hand that took life and put a staff in his hand to pop seeds for people to be rescued, to save life, right? And then when you look at the New Testament, you look at Paul when he was Saul. Right, he was one who persecuted the believers, ordered and watched the stoning of one of the disciples, Simon. And when he saw the light on the road to Damascus, and when God told one of the disciples to put his hands on him, even he was like, nah, he's this, he that. But he didn't know he had changed. And I believe that the universe uses people like me who have caused harm, sold drugs, and did some of the worst of the things is because we are acutely aware that we have wronged people and we have harmed people, and we have the integrity to admit it publicly, right? And with that comes a humility, because I'm willing to put my worst moment out in front of the public. So now I have no ego or no image to protect. So when someone else does something horrible, I can see past the harm and can see the person that they can develop to be if they get the love that I got from my mother and my village and my tribe, right? Because now I know, like, oh, I started selling drugs when I was 12. I shot somebody when I was 15. I went to jail when I was 16, right? So it just gives me a unique perspective and a commitment to humility. So I'm willing just to forgive, because if I give up on them, I give up on myself, because a person could have looked at me when I was 16 and say, he's a thug, he's a criminal, he's a super predator, fatherless, godless, jobless, dispose of him forever. But now here I am talking about love in Palm Beach, selling artwork, you know, and encouraging people to love. So it goes to show that with proper investment, whether it's an art gallery like DTR Modern, or art dealer like Ted Vassalov, or a fitness instructor and a photographer like Nigel Barker, or just an unnamed, unhero mom like Halim Flowers, or my wife, Lauren Patrice McKinney, right? It just takes a tribe to not just raise a child, but even to develop a man. And I just think that when people do horrible things, we just have a culture just condemning them and giving up on them, because we're individualistic, we're selfish, and we don't see the own wrongs that we cause ourselves and others.
You're talking about compassion in a very large way, and there's no doubt that compassion clearly has to start with yourself and the ability to love yourself in a way that allows you to love others. And when what you're talking about here is forgiveness, which is, you know, something which has, regardless of what religion you are, is so important as a healing tool for all. And you know, we have talked to so many people over the past 6 weeks, beginning of this year, about compassion and about, you know, looking after themselves first, with the idea that you can therefore help others, right? And your message rings so true. Look, thank you so much. I've got to say again, you've just opened so many people's minds, and you've, you know, clearly people are going to be judgmental. They're going to be angry. They're going to question, you know, and even your success so quickly. That there's always going to be jealousy out there too. But it seems your answer is that love is the antidote, is the antibody, is the vaccine. And I'm with you on that, right, as I think so many people are.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. We wish you all the best. I look forward to having your art myself. And good luck.
Get you some pieces. Get some pieces, man.
This weekend, because it's all about love. You're all about love. And it couldn't come from a better person. So I really, really, truly say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you too. Be blessed.
All the best.